I believe that we all have superpowers, things that maybe aren't that remarkable that we do consistently, not even remarkably well. There are heroes all around us, and it is these superpowers that they have that allow them to stand out as superheroes in the real world. And in this week's episode of Weekly Momentum, I'm going to be sharing one of my superpowers that only a couple of people knew about. That is until today. I'm going to be taking off the mask and revealing my secret identity in this kind of messy, very vulnerable episode of Weekly Momentum. Welcome to this week's episode of Weekly Momentum. And this week I decided to be extra vulnerable. I'm not feeling that great. And one of my superpowers that I just alluded to is that I'm really good at putting on a healthy face, showing up, and looking like I'm just fine when I'm actually really sick. And in this week's episode, I decided I'm not going to do that because I feel like every superpower that we have is both a strength and a weakness. And that's what I want to really get to the core of in this week's Weekly Momentum episode. I started creating this podcast, Weekly Momentum, maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago. And I've really enjoyed the consistency of it, of getting to connect with all of you each week and have a way for me to share not only the weekly momentum process, but insights and ideas to help both you and I stay in momentum. And so my dilemma this week was that I was really not feeling well. And I got through Monday and Tuesday, kept thinking I'll feel better on Thursday, I'll feel better on Friday. And I wasn't turning the corner enough to be ready to give you that full polished edition of Weekly Momentum. So I decided that everything always happens for a reason, and that perhaps what was meant to happen this week was for me to show you and to show up as my rough and ready, sick, unpolished version of myself and not use my superpowers. I could have brushed my hair. I could have thrown on a top. You all know how it is with Zoom. We can have on a really nice top and pajama bottoms and look like we're all put together. I could have put some lipstick on. I could have put my contact lenses in. I could have brushed my hair. But I decided I was just going to show up exactly as I am right now. It's a little vulnerable, it's a little scary, but it just felt like the right choice for me today. So let's talk a little bit about this superpower of mine. My daughter is one of the few people that is aware of this superpower. And it always blows her away that I can be really sick at home. And then I have a client appointment or a Zoom meeting to do. And it's almost like I've waved a magic wand. I go in, I do the Zoom, and then I seem perfectly fine. And then as soon as the Zoom's over, I crawl back into bed and I am sick as a dog. I remember particularly there was a retreat that I was doing and I was so sick. I was probably the sickest that I have ever been. And I managed to get myself to the urgent care. And I was so tired and I felt so sick. It was a 24-hour urgent care. And I got there and I checked in. And then I just lay across like 3 seats in the corner of the waiting room. And just, I didn't fall asleep, but I was just holding it together as best as I could. And they forgot about me. So I'm in the waiting room for hours. And I didn't even realize how much time had passed. And then suddenly the doctor comes out. There's nobody else in the waiting room. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, you're here. We forgot about you. I'm so sorry." And they hustled me into the consulting room and the doctor talked to me. And he said that I was really sick. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was nothing life-threatening, but it was a really bad infection, several of them that he could tell, in my chest and in my head and in my ears. It was everywhere. And he was gonna give me some antibiotics and then just tell me to really just rest and feel better. But I had a dilemma because I had a 3-day retreat to lead single-handedly that was happening in about 24 hours. And I let him know this. I feel actually quite lucky that I got this particular doctor because he had no qualms. He understood that there was no way around this, that people had paid thousands of dollars to come work with me for 3 or 4 days. I didn't wanna let them down, and that I needed to be fixed up in order to do this. And he gave me, like, so many prescriptions for so many things and sent me off on my way so that I could patch myself off and be good enough to lead this retreat. And it's funny because it is a lot like what happens in movies with superheroes, right? Because so often in movies with superheroes, what happens is that there's these battles and the superhero is fighting for good and the baddie comes along and the superhero gets injured in some way and goes back to their team, and then the team patches them up and puts them back together just good enough so they can go out and they can win the day. And that's what was happening with me. So I went and filled my very long list. I swear there was like 10 different items I was taking. I was on, I think, a couple of different steroids and all kinds of things. And because this was pre-COVID, it wasn't that people or myself were in the mindset then of, "Oh, I better not do this because other people might catch it." I was in the mindset of, "What can I do so I can feel good enough to honor the commitment that I've made to lead this retreat?" So I went off and I led this retreat. The drugs worked like a charm. I felt high and numb, but able to be present. And I got a lot of compliments on the retreat. So I know I was delivering material in a really strong and present and powerful way. And I had a team. I have my stepdad, I have my daughter, I have my best friend, and I had my assistant who is in Canada. And this is the only time she's ever flown out and helped with a live retreat. And she was there as well. So I had this amazing team of people to help me. And what they did throughout the retreat was basically pick me up, put me where I needed to be, make sure I had everything I needed, and then step back so I could then it was almost like they opened the curtain and the retreat people came in and I led the session and I was present. And then at the end of the session, they'd pick me up and carry me over to the hotel room. And then I would lie down and go to sleep for an hour or so. And then they'd repeat it again for each of the sessions. And my best friend could see behind the scenes because she was one of those people. And the retreat people who were attending the retreat just saw what happened when the curtains were opened. And I remember hearing my best friend towards, I think it was at the end of the retreat, somebody was asking her something or wanting to do something with me or something. Can't remember what it was. And I remember she just said, "I don't think you realize Marianne is not very well." She explained this whole situation that was going on because it was so not apparent to the people at the retreat. I've been doing this for several years of being able to pull myself together, and I'm sure some of you can do this too. I don't think that I'm alone with this superpower, but I decided today that it was a great day to talk about superpowers in general, and then also to come clean and not use this superpower and instead reveal the mask and say, "Hey, I don't feel good right now. I'm in bed. I've got a throat infection, an ear infection, a chest infection, a sinus infection. I'm on antibiotics. I wanted to patch myself back together, but I think you're going to get so much out of me showing up without the mask on today and just talking about being a superhero and superpowers. So we all have these superpowers. And it's so, I love the synchronicity of things because I was just scrolling through Facebook literally right before I hit record to start doing this episode. And one of the reels that was on, I don't know if it was Instagram or Facebook, that caught my eye as I was going through was literally somebody saying, and it was the captions, "My superpower is writing things down." And I thought, brilliant. What a great example. Yes, our superpowers are incredibly simple. It's not necessarily that we do these complex things that we've studied hard and that we are in a minority that we know how to do this thing that is our superpower. I think what makes a superpower and us, therefore, superheroes, because we have these superpowers in the world today, is that we show up and we use these superpowers consistently. And I've talked about consistency in other episodes. It truly is this magical thing that can be true as superpower, like in that example, might be that you write things down. People know they can count on you for giving them information that they can trust, or for remembering things that happened, or for keeping track of things for them. You know, I'm here in England right now, and I'm staying at my mom's house with my mom and my stepdad. And my mom has always worried. She worries. She worries all the time about absolutely everything. And she's constantly tracking everything. So let's say that I have a friend I'm going to meet for coffee in the village. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing that's super important, right? But I'm meeting a friend in the village at 11 a.m., right? Then at around 10:15 or even 10 o'clock, maybe even before that, my mom is going to start saying, "What time are you meeting your friend again?" Now, she knows what time I'm meeting my friend. She just thinks she's being sneaky by reminding me so that I don't forget that I'm meeting my friend. Now, a lot of times I would just find this so annoying because it was like, I know what I'm doing. I don't need you to keep reminding me. And then this time that I'm in England, she's done this my whole life. She does it not just with me, she does it with my stepdad. If we're going out somewhere, okay, Barbara's picking us up, but we're going to be reminded a million times because she really wants to have everybody be ready and nobody forget. And this is part of her superpower. And in the past, it's been really annoying. This time, I realized she'd make such a good secretary or a personal assistant. There are so many people in the world that could benefit from my mom's superpower of really being on track of what everybody's doing and their schedule, and do we need to leave right now, and it's time to get ready. And so I started calling her the secretary. What happened when I did this is I turned this annoyance of mine into a loving little joke. And so my stepdad and I just started calling her the secretary. Oh, here goes the secretary again. Maybe you have a superpower that you haven't even acknowledged yet. Maybe the people around you know about this superpower. You might ask people, hey, what do you think? What are my strengths? What is it that I do really well, or I do, once again, consistently, that you've noticed about me? Now, of course, my superpower of being able to look like I'm just as healthy as ever when I feel sick as a dog is not my only superpower. And I'm sure that you have a mixed bag of superpowers. Some of them, like the one I'm talking about with my health and how I show up, but also superpowers that make you stand out as a professional in your industry. Because often it's not even that you're better at doing what you do in terms of you have more credentials or more years of experience in what you do. It's how you do it. One of the things that is another one of my superpowers is that I'm really good at listening very clearly to what you're saying and then understanding it, even though it's not my area of expertise and I may have known nothing about it before, and then reflecting it back to you in a way that you can maybe get more insight from. I can take what you tell me, I can pluck your answers to a conversation that we're having and questions that I've asked, give it back to you in a way that you can really use in a powerful way in your career or your business. And so I was leading a retreat and it was around how to make sales feel more comfortable, more casual, more conversational. And what I did was I asked questions, I had them fill out worksheets, all of the participants at the workshop. And then I would look at their answers, and then I could go ahead and I could create a really amazing, very soft, easy sales pitch around what they were selling. And every time I did it, it was hilarious. They'd be like, "Oh my goodness, that sounds so natural. It sounds so easy. I want to be able to do that." I was using all of their words. And so one of my superpowers is to do that, right? And I'm not manipulating anything. I'm not trying to do that. It's just happening very naturally. So when we talk about superpowers, it's not that you deliberately want to master something. It's something that you already do really well that could be very down to earth, like the secretary or like my talent for reflecting things back. And over the years, I've used that talent in many different ways. And to the point that now I've helped over a dozen people write best-selling books by doing that exact thing, asking questions, listening, reflecting back their words to them in a way that is more organized and clearer and conveys their message better. I help people live out loud. That is my why. Simon Sinek talks about having a why, and he has a really great TED Talk and I can't remember the name of it. It was something along the lines of why great leaders inspire or something like that. It's his original TED Talk. He's had a couple since then. Simon Sinek has a whole book, Start With Why. And early on, a couple decades ago, I started exploring what was my why. And what I realized was that after coming up with a few different ideas of what my why might be, and exploring and getting curious about the different language, I realized that my why is to live out loud. I knew the essence of it for many years before I got that exact language. Your why statement is not something that you want to be. A lot of times people misinterpret this idea of like, what's your why? I know in some like multi-level marketing businesses or franchises, they'll have trainings where they'll have people that are part of their organization come up with what is their why. And what they mean by that when they say it is that the why is like, why do you do what you do in terms of who is it for? And a lot of times people will say, I have my business why. It's like so I can create a good life for my family or something like that. I'm not talking about that kind of why statement, and neither is Simon Sinek. If you really look at what he's saying, he's talking about what you do, what your superpower is. And so what I realized was that this that I've just been describing of being able to show up and be myself is my why. And it took a few attempts with the language that I would try on for size until a few years ago, I realized the best way to describe my why was that my why is to live out loud. Now, what I love, and I've worked with many people and helped them come up with their why statements as well. I think it's in my Business Strong Start program that I do with clients. It's a one-on-one program where we create a one-page strategic plan, which creates this blueprint for your business no matter what stage you're at, and it's called the Business Strong Start. I have people that have been in business for 20 years doing this program with me and saying, "Oh my goodness, why didn't I do this sooner?" It's not just for beginning businesses. But what it gives you is this really simple one-page blueprint of what your business is and what you stand for so that you can run different decisions and ideas through this blueprint to see whether or not it's a good idea to go in that direction or if it's going to take you away from the foundation, the essence of who you and your business are. So when I'm working with somebody else on their why statement, one of the ways that I know that we've hit on it, even if we're not got exactly the right language, is that your why statement is not only relevant for you. So mine is to live out loud. I also have past career as an actress, living out loud. I love to write. I've written one-person shows. I had one that I did when I was 50 and one that I did when I was 40. When I was 50, that was like my milestone project for myself. When I was 40, I wrote a one-person show called The Zen of Red Wine. And in it, I told my life story. I lived out loud on the stage. And for me, that's how I express myself. It feels so good to be that real and that raw and vulnerable. And I honestly don't know any other way of being in the world. There are different degrees that I live out loud, but I always need to be expressing myself and living out loud what I'm doing. Back to what I was saying, there's two ways to really know that you're on track with really uncovering your why or your ultimate superpower, right? Like mine of living out loud. One is that you're doing it and you look back over your life, not just in your business or in your career or professionally, but you look back over your life and yes, this was true in all areas of my life. If I'm doing something for fun, it's probably going to be something where there's an element of performance or an element of enjoying someone else's performance because that living out loud is in all areas of my life. The second thing that I think is really key about knowing you've hit your why statement on the head and that you truly got and understand what your why is when you are able to also see that you help other people with that. I've been coaching now for 20 years, and what I've naturally done over the years is that I've leaned towards helping people live out loud. And part of that is writing books so that they're living out loud. And I'm not just helping them write a book on how to build a widget. I help them write books that share vulnerable stories. And so I'm helping them to live and share their stories because I believe stories and living out loud is the most powerful way that we can move other people. And ultimately, I think as professionals and business owners, that we are doing what we're doing. Yes, we want to have a career. Yes, we love what we do, but we want to move people. We want to make an impact. And one of the most powerful ways we can do that is by sharing stories in vulnerable ways. So I've specialized in writing those types of books with other people, and they've hired me to do that. I have a best-selling author package that I sell. I also help people with speaking and doing presentations and help them find those raw, vulnerable stories and find the courage to do something that comes quite naturally to me, and that is to just show up and to share in a vulnerable place. It's incredibly scary for a lot of people, but for some reason, I mean, my mom hates it that I am willing to share so much so easily and to stand on stage and talk about everything because she never knows what's going to come out of my mouth. But for a lot of people, that is really difficult. So I'm really good at helping other people live out loud with their presentations, with their speaking for videos and using it in different ways. But also, if you think of going back to sales and moving people and sharing what it is that you offer in the world and inviting people to participate and to be able to utilize you as a solution to a problem they're having, they're not going to be able to do that if you can't express clearly what it is you do in a way that moves people. And so over the years, I've also been really good with my superpower of living out loud, of helping other people live out loud and to have these really moving sales conversations. I think that just honestly having a business or a career, you these days have to live out loud. Look at reels and social media. It's all about you being the brand. For decades, it was not that way. It used to be that it was the acceptable way to be in business was that you really didn't share much about yourself personally. It was a very distinct difference between you, the person, and you, the professional. But probably about 20 years ago, that completely shifted. And suddenly now, even for big brands, we want to know who that is. We want to know personally. We want to get to know the people and the face behind the businesses. And honestly, it makes it easier for us to connect with people because we do business with people that we know, we like, and we trust. And one of the best ways to do that is to live out loud, be yourself. What's going to happen when you do that? And maybe as I do this podcast right now, some people that have been following me might go, oh my gosh, this is really unprofessional. This is sloppy. She looks a mess, and they won't want to follow me anymore. And that's fine because when we truly live out loud and we use our superpowers to just be ourselves, then we're going to allow the people who are not a good match to drop away. And the people that are our people are going to be able to clearly see who we are so that they can find us even more easily. So we've gone off on a lot of tangents there. We started talking about superpowers. I talked about your why statement, which is, I think, another way of looking at superpowers. I talked about how we can have superpowers that are maybe positive and negative. So my superpower of pulling myself together usually, I'm on the fence. I think there's times when I'm sick and I need to do something and maybe it'll only take a few minutes and it's going to be less of a distraction for the other person if I show up looking healthy than if I show up looking sick. If it's for a few minutes and I don't need to leave the house and I can just tidy myself up, act like I'm totally healthy, be there and support someone else in a coaching session, I think it's better for me to do that than to show up and let them know, hey, I'm sick. Because as a coach, I want it to be all about you. And if I show up sick, immediately it becomes about me. So I do think there's a time and a place for me to use that superpower. And I also clearly see that I don't want to be using it all the time. It's funny, when you look at some of the superhero movies, there's often that if they overuse their superpower, that it actually starts to drain them and make them sick or it makes them weak. And this example is perfect for that because if I use that superpower of acting like I'm totally fine when I'm not, and if I do that too much, I'm going to make myself really sick, right? I'm going to drain my powers completely. So I'm aware of that. And I know that there's a fine line about when to just take care of myself and when to take a few minutes and just not make it about me, be present for the client in front of me and use my superpower. So what's coming to mind as I'm saying this, right? I'm in bed now. I'm cozy, so don't worry about me. I've got my tea, I've got my antibiotics, and I'm just here now to get curious with you about what your superpowers might be. What are those unremarkable things that you do remarkably well or consistently that people notice, that you stand out for? Like when I was scrolling through the reels today, that your superpower is writing things down. What is it? You probably have a few of them. I want you to be thinking about that. And as we go through weekly momentum, that's what the podcast is. This is one of my planners that I use. And if you could see my whole bed here, you'd see scrunched up tissues. You'd see my really good smelly thing that I have on my hanky from my mummy, who's taking care of me, the secretary. And you would see that I have my planners here in bed with me because it's soothing. The process of weekly momentum has been such a life changer for me. It's helped me gain understanding about superpowers that have shown up during each week. Because basically, what we do when we do weekly momentum is we're doing 4 really simple steps. So the first one is to rewind, the second one is to realign, the third one is to plan, and the fourth one is to plug in. So I'm going to take a moment right now. I'm going to go through those 4 steps with you, and we're going to look at it around this idea of superpowers and your why. And maybe using this 4-step process will help you to get clearer on your superpowers and how you can maybe utilize them in even more powerful ways. If you want to really dive into this weekly momentum process, then I strongly suggest that you, in the description, click on the link that says Weekly Planning for Busy Professionals. And it's going to take you to this program that I built just for you. It's a really amazing free program. It's definitely worth signing up for. And I made videos for you. I made videos of deep diving each of those 4 steps I just mentioned so that you can go through the process each week and understand it in even more depth than I go into in the podcast. So if you haven't signed up for that yet, please sign up for it. And I'd love to hear your feedback or your questions, and I'm always happy to answer any questions that you have about anything I'm talking about, any topics or the tools I'm sharing or weekly momentum. You can ask me questions anytime, and I'm happy to answer them on the air. So let's dive into the weekly momentum process for this week, and we're going to start with that rewind. Now, in the weekly planning pages, you're going to find the worksheet you'll need for this, and on it, it has 7 questions. Those are great questions. I answer them every single week. What I want to focus on more right now, though, is the idea of rewinding and looking back and learning from what's happened. So if you're thinking, what are my superpowers? What is my why? That's really at the core of everything that I do for myself and for my clients and customers. And if you're stumped about that, or if you have an idea but you're not sure whether or not you're nailing it, looking back over the last week is going to give you some clues. So I learned in retrospect that my why was to live out loud. If I would have just come up with that and then tried to be that, it wouldn't have worked. You already are using your superpowers. It's just a matter of you rewinding and noticing. So the 7 questions that we use in the weekly evolution, which is the rewind part of the 4-step process, will help you start to notice and find clues about things that might be your superpower or might be part of your why. The first question is, what felt satisfying last week? Now, typically when I'm using my superpower, it feels really good. It feels easy. It feels natural. And here's something else. When you are using your superpower, it's probably going to be unremarkable to you. It's so second nature that it's probably something that you do and you think, that's not a big deal. That's nothing. That's probably something that's a superpower because it comes to you so naturally. Now, clues might be that other people are noticing and remarking on it. So it's remarkable to other people, but it's unremarkable to you. So as you look back over the last week, can you notice? Can you remember Anybody commenting on something that you did that you were like, well, that's not a big deal. That's probably a little clue about your superpower. Another one of the questions is, what did you put energy into last week? And this is another great question that will help you uncover your superpower, because typically the things that we put energy into, but it doesn't feel draining, that it feels easy, that we get into that zone of genius, that we get into that flow state, those are things that are probably part of our superpower. When I'm speaking, when I'm working on creating content, writing a book, anything like that, then I tend to lose track of time. And so I might have put energy into something, but it didn't feel like it. Was there anything that you did last week where you were putting time into something and it just flew? That's a good sign that that might be something that's around your superpower. And just the act of rewinding is going to give you so much insights about yourself. It's how I think that I've expedited my personal growth and my professional growth over the years, so that I'm able to have a better understanding of myself and what makes me tick, and understand how I'm getting in my own way and what my superpowers are. So I encourage you, download the weekly planning for busy professionals. It's going to give you all of the questions to rewind that are going to help you once again begin to uncover your why, understand it, and learn more about your superpowers. The next step in the process is to realign, step 2. And step 2 is where you look at the bigger picture and you look at where you're really heading. And what I want you to think about this week as you're doing that, of course, look at your 90-day goals, look at your annual goals. If you don't have these, do something about it, because you're going to exhaust yourself if you're just spinning in circles and not getting anywhere. Reach out to me, book some coaching sessions, sign up for one of my programs, become a member of the Momentum Squad. Do something to support yourself in setting clear goals that are further out. I promise you that you can change your mind about them, but it is important to have something that you're aiming for. And that's why I have this realign step too, because every week you want to be reminding yourself, this is where I'm heading, so that you can start to feel that sense of making progress. Now, in terms of your why and your superpowers, what I want you to do this week as you're looking at your 90-day goals and your annual goals, I want you to go ahead and notice, are they honoring your superpowers? Are you planning on using your superpowers? There are many different ways to get to a destination. There are many different ways to achieve a goal. I want you to be reaching your destination in a way that honors your superpowers and your why. I'm going to reach my financial goals and my metrics in a way that is living out loud, podcasting, connecting with people, speaking, because that's tapping into my superpower. That's not the route for everybody, but it is a way that I can reach my bigger goals using podcasting, for example, to expand my audience. Now, if living out loud is not your superpower or your why, then you might have a more private way of reaching your goal of expanding your reach. And that's absolutely fine. But I wanted you to look in this realign step this week at your bigger goals and just make sure that you're moving towards them in a way that honors your authentic superpowers. Maybe by rewinding this week, you realized what your superpowers are a little bit more clearly. And now you can look at how you're going after your goals as you realign in step 2 and find ways to honor your unique strengths more than you are, instead of putting a square peg in a round hole. it will make everything feel so much easier. So in Realign Step 2, we're just kind of making sure that not only are you reminded of your bigger goals, but that you're in alignment with doing them in a way that honors your superpowers. Now, in Step 3 of the weekly momentum process, we are now going to plan. This is the one-page weekly plan that we use. It's in all of the planners. You can download a copy of it if you download the weekly planning for busy professionals. I also give you a video walkthrough of everything in great detail. But what I want you to think about this week as you're thinking about planning your week and doing your weekly to-dos and looking at your weekly goal is not just what you want to do, but how you're doing it. And I want you to keep in the back of your mind your superpowers and how they could maybe support you in accomplishing things this week in a way that is more in flow, more in alignment with truly who you are in an authentic way. Maybe to start with, what you do is you write down all the things that you want to get done this week. Then you narrow it down to 10 things. Then look at those 10 things and get really curious if there isn't a way of achieving each of those things that is more aligned with how you would do it, rather than doing it the way you think you should do it, or the way that people are telling you to do it, or how you thought you needed to do it. Can you look at the things that you're going to do this week and move through them in a way that feels like you're tapping into these superpowers that you have that you've taken for granted? In your business, people probably will pay a premium for you to use your superpowers. So the more knowledge you have about what they are, the more you can increase your bottom line by showcasing these superpowers that you have and offering them to other people. And that's really how we all match up together. We're all helping each other. I'm really good at this, you're really good at this, and we all support and help each other move along using the currency of money in that process. So as you're moving through your week, how can you honor and build your superpowers into what you're doing this week? And finally, Step 4 of the weekly momentum process, and that's where you plug in. That literally means make the time to do the stuff you're going to do. Put it in your calendar. Get your head in the game. Remind yourself that you are remarkable at doing some quite unremarkable things. And allow that to lift you up as you walk through the week. Your homework this week is at the end of every day to ask yourself, how did my superpowers come into play today? And to start asking the people around you, hey, what do you notice about me? What do I do well? What are my strengths? And look out for those unremarkable things, like writing things down that are your superpowers that people will pay a premium for, and start shining the light on them and spotlighting them both for yourself and using them more, and spotlighting them for other people so that they can find you and you can use your superpowers to help other people. So that's about all I have in me right now. I'm going to relax and get better. So thanks for joining me in this vulnerable, messy, authentic episode of Weekly Momentum. Fingers crossed next week. I'll be back. I'll be healthy, happy, and ready to create even more momentum with you. I will see you in momentum. Much love.